Welcome, friend. I'm Jack, host of the channel, and today we're diving into another episode. Pour yourself a drink and get comfortable, because I've got a powerful story coming your way. If something hits deep, drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's get into it.
I caught Sarah in the middle of her affair. My wife, Sarah, had been cheating, and I decided to stream the whole incident live. I just turned 48 this past January, and normally, Sarah, who has been my wife for 22 years, would have thrown a party to celebrate. But our marriage started unraveling almost a year ago, right after she joined a mixed-gender baseball group dominated by men. This set off a chain of events that led to the breakdown of our marriage. Sarah, who is 42, seemed to be going through something like a midlife crisis. Over the years, she had put on weight, especially during the COVID lockdown when she was working from home. Despite her efforts with home workouts and dieting, the results were not apparent, and the lockdown took a toll on her emotionally. With our kids out of the house, it was just the two of us most of the time. I never complained, always trying to encourage her. I understood it as part of aging, and honestly, I was not in great shape either. She has always been the attractive one, the kind who enjoys receiving compliments, dressing up, and going out. Her job in marketing made her very conscious of her appearance and first impressions. When the COVID restrictions eased, she felt the need to join a group activity. We discussed various options and signed up on an app called Meetup, where you can find local group activities. We weighed different choices, but the most convenient was a baseball group meeting 3 times a week, mostly with male members. I wanted to join too, but my job as a plumber often had me working long, unpredictable hours. Sarah thinks I am a workaholic, but I genuinely enjoy my work because of the satisfaction I get from completing tasks. I used to run my own plumbing business, but it became too overwhelming with all the responsibilities. Now, I work for a friend, focusing on my tasks and leaving the administrative stuff to others. After Sarah joined the co-ed baseball group, I remember her first game left her utterly exhausted, her whole body sore. I had to give her a massage when she got home, and she said she really enjoyed it. Within a few weeks, she could not stop talking about a guy named Mike. She mentioned that he was the best player on the team but very controlling, and she disliked him. She claimed he flirted with all the women, described him as obnoxious and a cheater who spoke ill of his ex-wife to everyone, even though no one had ever seen her. He had multiple failed marriages and was known as a muscle car enthusiast. As the weeks went by, Sarah continued to complain about Mike. She mentioned his smoking habits and how he often invited team members to smoke with him after games. This was a group of people in their 40s acting like teenagers. After about a month of attending games, Sarah was getting back in shape but still had issues with Mike. This time, she complained that he was not only a smoker, but also a dealer, getting people hooked on his products. Mike was working as a mechanic and selling marijuana MJ on the side. She told me that Mike had once been in the minor league and was on track to go pro before a drag racing accident derailed his career. He had a history of substance abuse and lived a fast-paced life. I asked her how she knew all these personal details about him, and she said he would not stop bragging about everything. Despite his flaws, everyone seemed to like him because he was funny, outgoing, offered to work on their cars for free, and gave out free MJ. She kept insisting that she did not find him amusing, though. One night, Sarah came home smelling like MJ. I asked why she smelled that way, and she told me she had been hanging out with some of her teammates who were smoking after the game. She explained that it was just the smoke clinging to her clothes. This started happening every time she returned from the game, which was 3 times a week. On one occasion, after a game, she took a shower, and I joined her. We became intimate, and I tasted MJ on her breath. I asked her point blank if she had been smoking, and she admitted that she tried it once because everyone was passing it around, and she did not want to seem awkward by refusing. I lost my temper. I confronted her about being a hypocrite because she had always told our 3 kids, our 23-year-old son, 21-year-old daughter, and 18-year-old son, not to give in to peer pressure, and here she was doing exactly what she warned them against. She brushed it off as a one-time thing and insisted she had not even inhaled. I decided not to argue further about her MJ use. I am not a confrontational person and certainly not the disciplinarian in our family. It surprised me to see her acting so out of character. The smoking itself did not bother me as much as the hypocrisy. I wondered who had influenced her and found it unsettling that she seemed so casual about something she would have made a fuss about if it involved our kids or me. She continued to complain about Mike, saying he was awful. Yet she was still hanging out with him and smoking his MJ. I noticed she was trying to mask the smell by taking a shower, washing her clothes, and brushing her teeth. But the odor still lingered. I chose not to confront her again, thinking she would either lie or come up with another excuse. Secretly, I was relieved because I had something over her in case she got self-righteous again. Thanksgiving was approaching, and our 3 children came to visit. Sarah was noticeably absent, which was unusual because she usually prepared a big Thanksgiving meal and hosted a party. This time, she was gone all day. When she returned, I asked where she had been, and she claimed she was visiting friends. When I pressed further, she said she had car trouble and took her car to Mike to fix it. I questioned why she had not informed us, especially since it was Thanksgiving, and she should have been home with the family. She insisted she had told our daughter she would be late and asked her to prepare the meal. Even our kids noticed the change in her behavior and thought we were having marital problems because their mom seemed distant and unprepared for Thanksgiving. Sarah claimed she was sick and retired to bed after returning from her so-called mechanic trip. For the first time in years, I had to take my wife and kids to a restaurant for Thanksgiving. Sarah was in bed, and I had to convince her to come with us. She wanted me to tell the kids she was sick, but I insisted she should tell them herself. I did not want to explain to my kids that their mom had been making new friends, smoking, and acting irresponsibly. I was at work most of the time and could not monitor her every move. At that point, the idea of an affair had not even crossed my mind. At the restaurant, my kids noticed something was off with their mom. She was making awkward jokes and seemed disconnected as if she did not want to be there. After leaving the restaurant, my daughter jokingly asked what I had done to her mom because she was acting so strangely. She also noticed Sarah had lost a lot of weight and wondered if that was affecting her behavior. I decided to be honest with my daughter and told her that her mom had joined a baseball team, made some new friends, and had started using MJ with them. My daughter thought I was joking because it was so out of character for Sarah. After Thanksgiving, my kids left, and I talked to Sarah about needing to change her behavior. I told her she could not continue acting like a college student. Still, I had not considered the possibility of her having an affair. I had trusted her too much to even imagine she could do that to me. The real trouble started when I noticed that our shared bank account, used for recurring bills like groceries and utilities, was overdrawn. I received a notification that $1 in $200 had been withdrawn. I tried calling Sarah, but she did not answer her phone. I finished my work assignment, canceled the next one for the day, and decided to go home to check on her because something felt off. When I got home, I noticed a 1964 Pontiac GTO parked on the street, a car I had not seen before. I have a passion for classic cars, so it caught my eye immediately. I parked my car in the driveway, right behind Sarah's, and went to open the front door. I immediately noticed that someone had hastily exited through the door leading to the backyard. I assumed it was Sarah because her car was in the driveway, and she had been home since her job no longer required her to be in the office after COVID restrictions were lifted. As I was about to open the door, the backyard door slammed shut. Believing it was Sarah, I hurried to confront her about the withdrawal from our account and why she had not been answering her phone. I headed toward the backyard door and opened it. I heard the backyard fence being opened, which alerted me that someone was trying to escape. Given the speed required to reach the fence, I concluded it was not Sarah. It had to be someone else, a burglar or someone fleeing from me. Whoever it was must have been running because I calculated the speed required to reach the fence within that short time frame. The fence is not visible when you open the backyard door because it is parallel to the building and parts of the structure block the view. To see who enters or exits the backyard through the fence gate, you have to step outside. By the time I reached the backyard and opened the gate, the person had vanished. I surveyed the area and noticed the unmistakable smell of MJ in the air, indicating someone had been smoking there. Suddenly, I heard Sarah calling me from the house, so I hurried back. When I saw her, she appeared as if she had just taken a shower. I asked her about the person who had been smoking in the backyard, and she denied anyone being there, claiming she had smoked earlier because she knew I disliked the smell. I told her that she was clearly not being truthful, especially given her unusual behavior over the past few months and her willingness to allow strangers into our home. I confronted her about crossing a line and directly asked if she was having an affair with the person who had fled. She vehemently denied it and acted as if I was speaking a different language. Then I questioned her about why she had not been answering my calls and the $1,200 withdrawal from our shared account, which we used to pay bills. She explained that she had lent the money to a friend in need, who would repay it as soon as possible. I was utterly bewildered at this point. Her words sounded like those of a gambler or someone obsessed with MJ. The information was too bizarre to comprehend. I asked if her friend thought she was a bank and why she had not sought my permission before making such a substantial withdrawal. She became irritable in response. I warned her that if she had given the money to her friends, there would be consequences. I made it clear that I expected the money back in the account by tomorrow. That evening, I reviewed all our bank statements and noticed that she was not contributing her fair share to the account. A significant portion of Sarah's income comes from commissions, so the more hours she works, the more she earns. I observed that she was contributing only about a third of what she was supposed to, explaining why the account balance was lower than usual and why I received a notification about the large withdrawal. I confronted her about not contributing her fair share and discovered that she was only putting in the minimum hours required to maintain her job. I inquired about what she had been doing with her time if she was not working. She made excuses, claiming she was constantly tired from working out and playing sports to lose weight. She argued that since the kids were no longer at home, we did not need as much money. I told her that if she was going to reduce her work hours, she should stop lending money to her friends and cut down on hanging out with her MJ using buddies. I also insisted that she quit playing that sport. I gave her an ultimatum. It was either our marriage or her social life. She reacted strongly, hurling insults at me, calling me insecure, and saying I was not man enough. I informed her that if she continued with the baseball games, we might have to end our 22-year marriage. She was furious that I would consider ending the marriage over something so trivial. She suggested I talk to someone because she believed I was being emotional and immature. I told her she was not the same person I had married, that she had changed since starting this baseball game and hanging out with her new friends. Despite being home all day, she no longer took care of household chores or cooking as she used to. She was barely working and appeared to be indulging in recreational activities like a college dropout. She accused me of being jealous of her improving appearance and life, implying she might consider my offer. Then she angrily left the room. We had an intense argument that night, and I ended up sleeping on the couch. The next day, she refused to speak to me or cook for me, hoping I would apologize and allow her to continue her negative behavior, completely disregarding the unexplained withdrawal from my account. We did not exchange words that day. The next day happened to be one of her baseball game days. Before I left for work, she tried to grab my attention to see if I was serious about pursuing a divorce if she continued to play. As I was getting ready, she walked past me and loudly declared that she would do as she pleased, asserting that I could not interfere with her happiness. I remained silent, got dressed, and left the house. In the afternoon, I contacted a divorce lawyer to prepare a separation agreement. My intention was to shock her, hoping she would realize the potential loss of her family due to her actions. Whether it was a midlife crisis or something else, I believed serving her divorce papers might wake her up. The lawyer drafted the separation documents, and I picked them up after work. When I got home, Sarah was not there, and I was not sure where she had gone. When she finally came home, I noticed she was not dressed for a baseball game. My plan was to serve her the divorce papers to emphasize that I was serious, hoping she would not sign them. Despite everything, I still loved Sarah and did not want to lose her. I wanted her to realize that she might end up divorced and alone. She entered through the front door, and I was waiting in the living room. As she walked by me, she continued giving me the silent treatment. Heading to the kitchen to prepare food for herself, I left the couch to retrieve the divorce papers. She was still in the kitchen when I handed them to her to sign. Her expression of shock, wide-eyed and open-mouthed, caught me off guard. I had not expected her next move. She pushed me and threw the divorce papers in my face, expressing disbelief that I would go through with this. She ran upstairs to the master bedroom, crying and lamenting that I had initiated divorce proceedings, even though she had not gone to the baseball game. I found myself in the kitchen, the divorce papers scattered across the floor, but I could not help but smile because everything had gone according to plan. I collected the papers, placed them back in the folder, and thought maybe this was the shock she needed. Later that night, I received a call from my daughter, who asked why I was divorcing her mom over a baseball game. It turned out Sarah had complained to our daughter about me. At that moment, I knew I had already succeeded. Knowing Sarah, I was aware that she was too embarrassed to beg herself, so she was using our daughter as an intermediary. I explained to my daughter that she had seen her mother's condition and strange behavior during Thanksgiving. I did not explicitly mention my suspicion of an affair, but my daughter remarked that it did not seem like her mom was having an affair and encouraged me to work through this challenging period with her. We spent over an hour on the phone. The following day, before heading to work, Sarah surprised me by preparing breakfast and lunch for the first time in about 6 months. She apologized for everything she had put me through and assured me she would start acting appropriately. She claimed she had done some introspection and realized her mistakes. I told her I would give her a month to get her act together, and if she continued smoking and hanging out with her friends, I would have no choice but to proceed with the divorce. I also reminded her that the money needed to be repaid to our account, and she agreed. We made amends, and I left for work. The following day, when I got home, Sarah and I had another conversation. She confided in me, explaining that she had been under a great deal of stress due to how the pandemic had impacted her job. Coupled with my heavy work schedule, she admitted she had been seeking an escape. Initially, the baseball game provided some relief, but she eventually succumbed to the allure of MJ and began using it. She mentioned that it had a relaxing effect and helped alleviate her anxiety. For the first time, she revealed she had been battling depression and taking medication for it. Surprisingly, she disclosed that since she started using MJ, her reliance on depression medication had gradually decreased. I asked her about the person who had fled our backyard, and she claimed there was nobody there. However, I could tell she was not being truthful. Regarding the money withdrawal, she apologized and asked me not to be offended, explaining it might take a while to replace the money because she had used it to buy MJ. Although I was deeply upset, I did not want to disrupt the moment, as Sarah seemed remorseful, as if she was having a significant realization. I hoped that after this, I could finally have my wife back. The next few days were relatively normal, as if we had returned to our usual routine. I came to terms with the fact that her smoking might not stop since she claimed it helped with her anxiety and depression. I assured her I was not overly concerned about her smoking. My main worry was about the people she purchased it from. In our state, MJ is illegal, and those dealing in such substances are often questionable characters. She continued to smoke in secret, trying to conceal it from me as much as possible. I chose not to confront her to avoid conflict, which inadvertently made her think she was good at hiding it. She began picking up extra hours at work and contributed slightly more to our shared account, although not to the extent she had before. I was covering around 70 to 80% of the expenses, including the mortgage, the largest bill. One evening, while we were watching TV together, her phone rang and she answered it, then walked into another room. I could hear her giggling from the other room. A few minutes later, she returned to the couch, and I asked who it was. She got defensive and claimed it was just a friend. Her reaction was unusual, raising a red flag for me. On another occasion, I came home early and opened the fridge to grab a beer, but it was missing. Since it was only Sarah and me at home, our kids had moved out. And she does not drink beer. I wondered who might have taken it. I considered the possibility that she had moved it, but it did not seem likely. This led me to suspect that she might be inviting someone over without being honest with me. Christmas came and went, and my kids noticed Sarah was behaving better than she had during Thanksgiving, but I had a feeling she was just putting on an act. In January, she began reverting to her old ways, smoking excessively, sleeping through the day, and working less. When my birthday came around, she did not throw a party, buy me a gift, or want to go out for dinner to celebrate. My kids called to wish me a happy birthday, and I reminded Sarah that she had forgotten my birthday. She was surprised she had forgotten. I told her she was smoking too much, and it seemed to be affecting her memory. She explained she had marked it on her calendar, but had forgotten and apologized to me. I first encountered the Ring doorbell at a client's house, where we communicated through it. I had not known about the Ring before, but I thought it was great that it allowed you to see who was at your front door in real time and connected to your phone. I considered using it to monitor Sarah, observing what she did throughout the day and who she was inviting into our home. So I purchased a Ring doorbell and installed it at our house. Initially, Sarah did not pay much attention to the camera. She knew I had always been a gadget guy and considered it just another one of my many useless gadgets, as she often called them. The Ring doorbell was connected to my Wi-Fi, so I received notifications when someone was at our door, and it recorded videos in the cloud that I could access anytime. On the first day after installation, while I was at work, I received a motion-activated video recording notification from the Ring. I was busy and did not check my phone for about an hour. When I finally did, I saw a man at our front door. He did not even have to knock. Sarah was already there, waiting for him. She opened the door and welcomed him inside. It was clear she knew him. The thought racing through my mind was that this could be the same guy who had dashed through my backyard, the one who had been helping himself to my beer in my absence. Maybe this was Mike, the person supplying MJ to my wife, or even the man she might be having an affair with. I quickly checked the real-time camera feed, and it appeared the man was still inside my house and had not left. I was 30 minutes away from home and had not even finished my current assignment. I informed my client that I needed to leave and drove home as fast as I could. The man had been in my house for over an hour, and I monitored the Ring camera on my phone as I drove. The video feed was not very reliable. While driving, it kept freezing, so I decided to focus on the road instead, making my way home as quickly as possible to catch him in my house. When I arrived home, I only saw Sarah's car in the driveway. I rushed inside, heading straight to the master bedroom. The room was empty, the bed disheveled, and the air felt stale. I could not tell if it was from Sarah's shower or just stagnant air. She was nowhere to be found in the bedroom, nor was the man. I checked the closet and under the bed. At that moment, I heard the backyard door open, so I hurried downstairs to see who it might be, thinking the guy might be trying to escape as he had before. As I was halfway down the stairs, Sarah emerged from her home office near the kitchen. She had a shocked expression, eyes wide open, as if she had seen a ghost. I noticed she was wearing only a white robe. She told me that I had startled her, asking why I was home early and why I seemed so anxious. I had to collect myself, not wanting to give any indication that I suspected a man had just been in my house, possibly involved with my wife, and that I had narrowly missed catching them in the act. It started to sink in that I had just missed them. I decided there was no need to confront her, as I knew she would deny everything, even if I showed her the Ring footage of him entering the house. Instead, I thought it best to wait and catch them in the act. From the look in her eyes, I could tell she suspected something was wrong, but could not figure out how I knew or why I was not confronting her. I came up with a random excuse, pretending to be searching for a tool, a Makita cordless metal hole punch, though she had no idea what that was. I wanted to act as if everything was normal while sensing she was trying to read my actions. I descended into the basement, grabbed a random tool, and returned to the main part of the house. She was still standing there, almost as if in a state of shock and unable to move. I approached her and gave her a kiss on the cheek, as I typically do when leaving the house. Even as I got closer, it was evident that she had been smoking not too long ago. I pulled back, as if everything was normal, and inquired why she was acting strangely and if she was okay. She replied yes and escorted me to the door. As I walked toward the driveway, I could not help but wonder how this guy managed to be with my wife and escape right under my nose. I believe this might have been the second time he had been with her, and I had narrowly missed catching him. I considered the possibility that he might still be hiding inside the house. I decided to check the ring footage to see if he had already left. Sarah was still at the door when I reached my car, just staring at me. I tried to act as normal as possible, but once I got into my work van, I felt paralyzed. I knew she was watching me from the partially open door, so I sat in my car, pretending to look at my paperwork while checking my phone to confirm whether he had left the house. Indeed, he had left before I arrived home. I had just missed him again. As I sat there reviewing the ring footage, my cell phone rang. It was my friend, the person I worked for, asking why I left the client's place without completing the job. As the client was complaining, I was working on a bathroom renovation for the client and contemplated calling off the job for the day, but I knew it would be a hassle for another plumber to pick up where I had left off. Therefore, I decided to return to work and finish the job. I found it difficult to concentrate at work, though my plumbing skills were second nature to me. My mind kept returning to the bewildering idea that Sarah was willing to throw away 22 years of marriage for an MJ cellar and some recreational time. I could not fathom how she transformed from a well-mannered wife with strict traditional values into a frequent MJ user, despite her promises to quit. After finishing my work that day, I could not bear going home, so I sat in my van, contemplating my next steps. I decided to visit a local bar, despite not being a heavy drinker, just to be around people. At the bar, I ordered some beer and sat on a stool, deep in thought. I came up with the idea of purchasing a video recorder and a GPS device to install in Sarah's car, allowing me to monitor her movements. I went to a nearby electronics store, but could not find a reputable GPS or hidden camera. I ended up using my phone to order one online, but I did manage to buy 2 voice-activated recorders, intending to place them in our bedroom in Sarah's home office. When I returned home, Sarah had prepared my favorite meal, something she used to do in the past, especially when she felt guilty about something. I remained composed and pretended everything was normal. After a while, I went upstairs to take a shower and join her for dinner. I even remarked that it was unusual for her to be making dinner, and she tried to insist that she always did. We both chuckled it off. I made an effort to conceal my pain and resentment toward her. However, after dinner, I could no longer contain my emotions, and I felt the urge to confront her. Instead, I decided to take the dog for a walk. Walking the dog helped clear my mind. I considered calling my daughter to inform her about her mom's affair, but decided against it, not wanting to involve her and fearing she might jeopardize my plans to catch Sarah red-handed. I was seeking more evidence. Although I already had some, I wanted to confirm I was not imagining things. I had seen her affair partner on my Ring camera, a brown-haired, tall, skinny guy. I knew his face and could pick him out of a lineup. I just wanted to see how deep this situation went. When I returned home, Sarah was already asleep. I did not feel comfortable sleeping in the same bed where she might have been with her dealer and affair partner just hours ago. Sleeping in the guest room would arouse suspicion, so I decided to endure my discomfort and sleep next to her. That night, I struggled to sleep, woke up in the middle of the night, and installed the voice-activated recorder in her office in our bedroom. The following morning, she woke up before me and prepared breakfast as if nothing had happened. It was easier for me to pretend this time compared to the previous day. At work that day, I could not resist checking my Ring camera regularly, even though I had set up notifications for any motion detected. Sarah only left the house to go grocery shopping, as she had called me to let me know, and returned with bags. The second and third days were uneventful. She rarely left the house, and I began to wonder if something was wrong or if she had caught on to my Ring camera surveillance. On the evening of the third day after I had spotted the stranger at my door, I retrieved the voice-activated recorder, went to my car, and started listening to the recorded conversations. It became evident that Sarah had been spending hours on the phone with this man named Mike, who was a part of her baseball group. From their conversation, it seemed like Sarah was no longer attending the games, but she had developed a close relationship with him. He was asking when he could come over, but Sarah expressed concern that I had unexpectedly shown up at home one time, making her apprehensive about being intimate at our house. They could not be intimate at his place due to his girlfriend and 3 kids, and he did not want to spend money on a hotel. He suggested they meet in a parking lot, but Sarah refused, stating that a parking lot was crossing the line for her. Yet being intimate in our bed was somehow acceptable. He proposed that she come to his workplace, where they had been intimate before, but she was concerned about his business partner. Apparently, during Thanksgiving, she went to see him at his shop, and his partner caught them. Mike co-owns a mechanic shop with his business partner, and his partner did not appreciate their workplace being used for such activities. Still, he was insistent on having Sarah visit his place of business, even if it jeopardized their business relationship, all for intimacy with a married woman. Based on their conversation, it seemed like Sarah was receiving MJ in exchange for intimacy, or at the very least a discount. That was the impression I got from their discussion. Lying in bed, I contemplated my next steps and how to proceed from here. I feared my plan had backfired because Sarah had grown suspicious, potentially missing an opportunity to confront her. The next morning, while taking a shower, I had the idea to locate her stash of MJ. I knew she was smoking daily and trying to mask her breath with peppermint and mouthwash to hide it from me. I suspected she might be dependent on it as a coping mechanism since she was not taking her medication. My plan was to find her stash and dispose of it, forcing her to invite him over for more. The challenge was how to locate the stash without her knowing. She was home all day, only leaving the house for a couple of hours. It seemed I might have to thoroughly search the house to find it. However, I remembered that our daughter would be visiting that weekend to see her mom. They typically went to her mom's place in the countryside for the entire day, which would give me enough time to search for her stash. This visit was not unusual since they visited her mom about once a month. I had already returned the voice recorder to her office. The rest of the week was uneventful, looking ahead to when my daughter visited. She inquired about her mom's well-being, and I assured her everything was fine. I refrained from revealing anything, as I suspected she might inadvertently tip off Sarah. My daughter is not the best at keeping secrets. On Friday, the GPS and hidden camera I had ordered arrived. On Saturday morning, Sarah and our daughter set out to visit her mother. With them out of the house, I took the opportunity to listen to the voice-activated recorder in her office. It confirmed my suspicions about the guy involved in her life, indicating he was a dealer, possibly dealing with more than just MJ. However, I could not determine if Sarah was using anything more than cannabis. I also learned from the recordings that Mike used to play for a minor league and was on track to go pro until he had an accident, leading to an obsession with painkillers. This was his downfall. In contrast, Sarah did not have any known traumatic experiences, so it baffled me why she was drawn to such a person and started using MJ. Her upbringing had been fairly normal, and her recent revelation about depression caught me off guard. Perhaps it stemmed from the prolonged time she spent at home, potentially leading to weight gain. Sarah retained her suspicions that I had discovered her affair, but questioned how I knew. She claimed ignorance regarding my sources. I surmised that she might have made this statement to deter Mike, as he was eager to meet her. Before she left with our daughter for the weekend, I installed the camera in both the master bedroom and the living room. My next task was to locate her stash of MJ. I scoured the entire house, contemplating even hiring a sniffer dog, yet by the day's end, I came up empty-handed, leading me to believe she either had nothing left or had taken it with her. Their return was scheduled for Sunday afternoon. While sitting on the couch watching TV, an idea struck me. I should search the backyard for any potential hiding spots. I ventured outside about an hour before sunset and began inspecting the area. I suspected she might have buried her stash, but fortunately, I did not have to wait long before stumbling upon a Ziploc bag containing MJ and a grinder. I promptly disposed of the MJ down the toilet and discreetly returned the Ziploc bag to its original location. It appeared she had hidden it outdoors to avoid suspicion due to the smell, as she often engaged in her activities in the backyard, and her affair partner had once slipped away from there. I decided to move the camera from the living room to the backyard, concealing it so that it would not be too conspicuous. Once I had set up the camera, I conducted a test run, and it performed well. This put me at ease, as I could now monitor the activities in my house without Sarah having any clue about it. My next step was to install the GPS in her car once she returned from her visit to her mother. My ultimate objective was to gather evidence against her for our eventual divorce. She came back home that Sunday evening, and after she had gone to bed, I discreetly installed the GPS device in her car. On Monday morning, my daughter returned to her own place. During my work hours, I contacted the same divorce lawyer who had previously drafted our separation agreement. I laid out my situation for the lawyer, including my suspicions about Sarah's infidelity. I asked how I could leverage the recorded evidence to my advantage, but he explained it would have little impact on my divorce case, as our state operates under a no-fault divorce system. This means we can only cite irreconcilable differences as the reason for our divorce, and Sarah cannot be penalized for her infidelity by a judge. The lawyer assured me that the divorce paperwork would be ready the following day. I also confided in my friend, the one I work for, about my situation. He understood that I might have to leave work at any moment because the camera was linked to my phone while I was on the job, allowing me to monitor Sarah's movements. On that particular day, I observed Sarah in the backyard, searching for her MJ. She appeared quite frustrated, but eventually returned inside. I had my phone on standby, ready to be alerted if she invited him over again. However, instead of that, she got into her car and drove away. Since I had the GPS installed in her car, I could track her location. She drove to an unfamiliar place and stayed there for about 30 minutes before returning home. I marked the location for further investigation to find out where she had gone. I felt a bit disappointed that things did not unfold as I had originally planned, but at least with the GPS in her car, I had some insight into her activities. When she came back home, she headed to the backyard, lit up some MJ, and concealed the rest in the same spot. This confirmed my suspicion that she had gone to meet him to obtain more. Update. One thing I forgot to mention is that once I discovered her infidelity, I promptly went for an STD test, and fortunately, the results came back negative. Since catching her affair partner on my Ring camera, I have not had any intimacy with Sarah. Historically, I have been the one initiating it in our relationship, so she has not actively sought it from me. Moreover, she is already romantically involved with her affair partner, and I strongly suspect that during her recent visit to him, they most likely had a physical relationship. There was no other reason for her to spend 30 minutes at that location. After work, I managed to trace the area she had visited and discovered it was a mechanic shop. To my surprise, I spotted the unmistakable 1964 Pontiac GTO, the same car I had seen on my street the day I almost caught someone fleeing from my backyard. I felt intense anger knowing that this guy had been inside my house. I felt disrespected and had an urge to confront him right then and there, but I had to talk myself out of it. It was unsettling to think that he was so familiar with my backyard, suggesting he may have been there before. I parked my work van a few blocks away from his shop to observe it for a stakeout. It was getting late, but I remained there until I noticed him emerging from the shop with another friend. They had closed the garage doors and were standing in front, presumably smoking. I could not be certain if they were smoking cigarettes or MJ, as I was too far away to discern. I should have been on my way home, but I could not resist waiting and watching them. Deep down, I was comparing myself to him, questioning why Sarah had chosen him over me, why she had opted to betray me with him. Something about his life excited her, something I could not replicate. Maybe she had grown tired of pretending to be a good person and decided to reveal her true nature. After they finished smoking, he got into his car and drove off. I saw this as my opportunity to follow him and discover where he lived. He had already been to my house multiple times and engaged with my wife, so it seemed only fair that I should know where he lives, in the hope of disrupting his relationship with his girlfriend. Eventually, I wanted to hurt this man. Dark thoughts swirled in my mind. I had a concealed hand tool, a Springfield Hellcat, in my car. I thought about driving up to him and destroying him there. However, I realized that I would probably become the prime suspect if they discovered he had been with my wife. He drove his car to a restaurant and picked up a woman. Initially, I assumed the woman was his girlfriend, so I took some pictures with my phone. The pictures were not very clear due to the fading light, but I parked on the street to remain inconspicuous. He collected the female passenger, and I trailed behind him. They arrived at an apartment building with street parking, and I could discern from their body language that she was not his girlfriend. Their behavior indicated a strong attraction, as they could not keep their hands off each other while entering the apartment. My suspicion grew that she might be another one of the women he was involved with romantically. I pondered whether to wait for him to exit so I could follow him and uncover his residence. Yet, with no certainty of when he would leave, I opted to capture a picture of his license plate number and return home for the day. Now I knew that this man was not just a dealer, but also a womanizer, with Sarah being one of the women he was engaged with. The following days were exceedingly disheartening, and it became increasingly challenging to share a room with her. I was losing hope and contemplating ending it all, proceeding with a divorce so we could go our separate ways. I feared that sooner or later, she would decipher the purpose of the Ring doorbell, discover the voice-activated recorder, or detect the hidden camera I was using to spy on her. It was a monotonous week, observing her conversing with her affair partner and watching her on camera, smoking in the backyard at least twice a day. I estimated that it might take her 3 to 4 weeks to deplete her MJ stash, and I did not want to wait that long. I could not endure living in the same house with her for such an extended period, knowing she was involved with another man. I wanted to bring the situation to a conclusion, so when she went to bed, I ventured into the backyard with my flashlight and excavated her bag of MJ. I noticed it also contained a blend of tobacco and MJ. In any case, I removed more than half of the contents, returned the rest, and then retired to bed. Update: after I left for work one morning, I observed her on camera smoking. I am unsure if she noticed the reduction in the stash. Skipping ahead 3 days, I have been gathering all my documents in order. Besides the shared account, which does not hold substantial funds, and the house, which is already paid off, there is nothing else that requires division except for our retirement savings. She has approximately $45,000 in her 401k, whereas I have around $870,000 in my Roth account. I anticipate she will try to claim a share of my Roth account. According to my lawyer, a portion of my retirement savings will need to be allocated to her due to the duration of our marriage. However, she is unaware of the exact amount in my Roth account, as she has always been passive about retirement planning. I was the one responsible for financial planning and earning money, while her role was primarily focused on spending. I even had to persuade her to open a 401k account 9 years ago, and she made minimal contributions. The bulk of the savings is essentially free money, and she has not taken advantage of it. Her tendency has been to rely on me, all the while complaining that I work excessively or do not take enough time off. In reality, our plan was to retire early, motivating my hard work and dedication. Now that our children are grown, we intended to relocate to South America and spend the rest of our lives happily. However, it seems she prematurely checked out of our marriage and is now engaging in an affair. She is poised to take half of the work and effort I have invested over the years. My attorney mentioned that typically, the longer the marriage, the more likely it is that retirement accounts will be divided fairly equally. I cannot allow this to happen. My hard-earned assets cannot go to waste. I upheld my end of the deal, remaining a loyal and caring husband, providing for my family, and working diligently to ensure her happiness. Despite my efforts, she decided to engage in a romantic relationship with another man. Based on the voice recording, I do not believe she intends to leave me for him. It appears she is merely enjoying the excitement of a fling. I do not think she is willing to trade this stable life she has with me for an unpredictable dealer, but she revels in the thrill. She mentioned this on the voice-activated recorder. She could not contain her laughter at his remarks. He attempted to persuade her to leave me, even though he has a girlfriend and young children. I understand that listening to the voice-activated recorder is emotionally taxing, considering the things she is saying about me. Nevertheless, it is crucial that I uncover the truth and understand her thoughts about me. She referred to me as boring and unadventurous, criticized my performance in bed, and suggested that I did not measure up to him, even dubbing me a 5-minute man, which is not accurate. I suspect she was saying these things to boost his ego. He is only 32 years old, a younger age than I initially thought, possibly because the baseball group primarily consisted of individuals in their 40s. He frequently complimented her, which bolstered her fragile self-esteem. I have come across instances where younger men focus on middle-aged women with self-esteem issues, finding it easy to engage in intimate relationships with them. Using his license plate, I managed to uncover his place of residence and conducted some surveillance by driving past his house on a couple of occasions to keep an eye on him. During these observations, I noticed his girlfriend and his 3 children, all under the age of 10. One evening, while we were in bed, Sarah initiated intimacy. I cannot recall the last time this happened, but I informed her that I was too tired. She became upset because we had not been intimate for weeks. My reluctance to be close with her was due to the knowledge of her ongoing involvement with her affair partner. I mentioned that it had been a demanding week at work as an excuse. The truth is, I still find her physically appealing, and I do desire intimacy with her. However, in my view, she has become tainted similar to a person engaging in street solicitation, and I felt that engaging with her would legitimize her actions. 2 days later, while I was at work, I received a notification from my Ring doorbell and promptly checked it. It was him, and Sarah had invited him in, similar to previous occasions. This time, I was not far from home, only about 15 minutes away. I swiftly got into my car and headed back home, arriving in less than 10 minutes. On this occasion, I decided not to park my car in the driveway to avoid drawing attention, instead parking on the street. I had my Hellcat, which I always carry in my car, although I had not anticipated using it. I was emotionally prepared, having had time to contemplate such a moment. My intention was not to take a life, regardless of how strong my desire was to confront this man for showing disrespect. However, I had my personal protection, given that he is involved in dealing. I was not sure about his potential capabilities. My goal was to confront him at gunpoint and call the authorities. I hoped he had MJ on him, which would lead to his arrest. I had my phone set to record, hanging it in my left shirt pocket to capture audio without needing to hold it. To avoid the front door, I chose to enter through the backyard fence, as I believed the backyard was his potential escape route. At this point, approximately 20 minutes had passed since I received the Ring notification on my phone. I carefully slid the bolt of the wooden fence gate latch to open it from the outside, all while keeping my camera in my left pocket still recording. As I entered through the backyard door leading to the kitchen, I held my keys in my right hand and my Hellcat in my left. Both the backyard and kitchen doors were wide open. There, in my living room, I found Sarah and her affair partner, both unclothed, engaging in an intimate act on the living room couch. Due to the open floor plan, I could see the living room from my vantage point in the kitchen. I dropped my keys on the floor to free up both of my hands to hold my Hellcat. They were both taken aback upon seeing me. Without hesitation, I began giving them commands to lie down on the floor or face dire consequences. They complied, with the man quickly getting on the floor. He was partially dressed, attempting to put on his pants before I ordered him to stop. While he was lying on the ground, Sarah, who was now wearing a robe, tried to de-escalate the situation by saying, "I am sorry, it is not what it seems." I made sure my left pocket camera was still recording because my left arm had partially obstructed the view. I continued to point my Hellcat at the affair partner, cursing at him. Sarah, now wearing a robe, slowly attempted to rise. I allowed her to, as I was focused on the affair partner, and I ordered her to join him and stay flat on the ground. This action made it clear to her that I was serious, and she promptly obeyed. Later, I reviewed the recorded footage to gather these details, as my adrenaline had been running high during the encounter. I knew I needed to establish control of the situation before contacting the police. With Sarah on the floor, apologizing and insisting that Mike meant nothing to her, he began begging me not to harm him. I took out my phone and dialed 911, telling the dispatcher that I had caught a dealer in my house and was holding them both at gunpoint. The dispatcher instructed me to remain calm and wait for the police to arrive. After ending the call with the dispatcher, I instructed Mike to stretch both his hands forward while lying down and pleaded with him not to give me a reason to use force. Sarah remained on the floor, pleading with me. I walked over to the front door and swung it wide open, making it easy for the police to enter when they arrived. I noticed a bag of marijuana on the living room table. Although it wasn't a substantial amount, I hoped it would be enough for the police to arrest him. I waited for what felt like an eternity, about 5 minutes. I was tired of keeping both of them terrified, all while recording the entire incident. So I decided to FaceTime my daughter, despite Sarah's pleas to refrain from doing so. My daughter witnessed her mother lying there with her semi-naked affair partner. I explained the situation to her, and she began to cry, unable to believe what she was seeing. Sarah felt embarrassed. Her head hung low as my daughter spoke. Just then, I heard police vehicles pull into the driveway. The officers entered my house as I lowered my Hellcat. I approached them at the door and briefed them on the situation. Initially, there were 2 officers, but 2 more soon arrived, making a total of 4 officers and 2 patrol cars. The first officers detained Mike for the marijuana in the living room. He tried to shift the blame onto Sarah, claiming it was her marijuana, not his. It was quite amusing to watch them both accusing each other of ownership, effectively incriminating themselves. Sarah tried to deny it was hers, insisting it belonged to him, but he admitted to selling it to her, effectively relinquishing ownership. In retrospect, I probably should have told the police it was Sarah's marijuana, and you'll understand why later on. The police couldn't determine ownership definitively, so they detained both of them. Now, there were 3 patrol cars parked in front of my house. They placed Sarah in one of the patrol cars, allowing her to put on her clothing while she still had her robe on. It was an embarrassing moment since all the police officers, who were male, saw my wife partially unclothed. I felt somewhat uncomfortable about it, but I had to remind myself that she had put herself in this situation. Upon weighing the marijuana, they found it to be around 40 grams, which is close to being a state jail felony. However, one of the officers later told me privately that the judge might reduce the charge to a class of misdemeanor possession if it was determined to be Sarah's. By now, I wanted the police to take severe action against Mike, the affair partner. The cops escorted him to his car to search for more marijuana, but he refused, stating they needed a warrant to do so. The cop replied that they had probable cause to believe the car contained evidence of criminal activities since he had already admitted earlier to giving the marijuana to Sarah, essentially acknowledging his intention to distribute or sell it. It seemed as if all the police in my city had nothing else to do because more officers arrived. You would think a major drug bust was unfolding. Even the K-9 unit joined the scene, making it clear they were determined to throw the book at Mike due to his prior criminal record. They were handling this case with significant force, attempting to secure a lengthy sentence for him. After their search, they found approximately 4 pounds of marijuana in his possession, enough for a state jail felony. This offense carries a mandatory minimum sentence of 180 days imprisonment, a maximum of 2 years imprisonment, and a fine not exceeding $10,000. The evidence appeared solid, although the length of his prior offenses was uncertain, but it's likely he would face up to 2 years in prison. I'm not sure if an affair with another man's wife is worth all that trouble, but he chose the wrong person's wife to become involved with. They later charged him with the marijuana found in my house and released Sarah. He was arrested and taken away while his friend later came to retrieve his car. I also informed the police that I wanted him charged with trespassing, but they explained that he couldn't be charged with trespassing because infidelity isn't a crime, and he was invited by Sarah. They mentioned that they might need me to come to the police station to provide additional statements, even though I had already given my statement once. Once Sarah was released from the police car, she rushed into the bedroom and locked herself in. My daughter called me, revealing that Sarah had been trying to contact her, but she refused to answer. She asked me what had happened, and I shared the whole story. She was in tears the entire time. Although I felt bad for live streaming the situation with Sarah and her affair partner, it wasn't my fault. Sarah had put us in this predicament, and I wasn't the only one who should be experiencing the consequences. My daughter inquired about the next steps, and I explained that I had already contacted and hired a real estate agent and that we would be selling the house. I also mentioned that I had found a divorce lawyer and the divorce agreement had already been prepared. All that remained was to serve Sarah with it. My daughter told me she would visit us next week. After our conversation, I knew it would be difficult for her, as she is very close to her mother. In the evening, I had mixed emotions about the entire situation, and Sarah remained in the room. I felt a deep sense of sadness as our 22 years of marriage seemed to go down the drain. There were no heroes in the story, and it wasn't how I envisioned our relationship ending. Just 2 years ago, Sarah and I vacationed in South America, visiting countries like Uruguay, Chile, and Peru to look for houses to purchase. In just 1 year, she had thrown everything away, and I couldn't help but wonder why. Her carelessness in inviting him to our home was a shocking revelation. I'm relieved she did because it revealed her true colors. Who knows if she had done this before? He might not be her only affair. That evening, I went to a local bar to have drinks with a friend. We discussed various topics, avoiding any mention of Sarah and the earlier events. I was trying to divert my mind from the whole situation. While at the bar, drinking and chatting with my friend, my eldest son called. He had been informed by his sister about what had happened. He apologized for his mother's actions and expressed his willingness to support any decision I made. He understood that his mother had put everyone in this difficult position. This made me proud and emphasized that my son had matured. He also has a serious girlfriend, and they've already moved in together. I used to give him relationship advice, but now I felt like I was the one in need of guidance. When I returned home that evening, I didn't want to see Sarah, so I chose to sleep in a different room. The following day, I went to work and had a conversation with my youngest son. I confided in my friend about what had transpired, and he offered his support. He also said he'd understand if I needed some time off to manage the divorce. I left work early to visit the lawyer's office before it closed. I collected the divorce agreement for Sarah to sign and contacted the real estate agent to list the property for sale on the MLS. She informed me that she'd come by during the weekend to take some photos. When I returned home, Sarah was waiting for me and expressed her readiness to talk. I told her I wouldn't engage in a conversation until she signed the divorce papers. She insisted that I allow her to speak first, promising to sign the divorce papers afterward. She even hinted that if I didn't let her talk, she might prolong the divorce process. I reminded her that she was in no position to make threats. If she wanted a public divorce, I was prepared to take it to court, and this calmed her down as she realized I didn't make empty threats. She requested that I bring the divorce papers for her to sign, but she also asked for an explanation of the terms within the divorce agreement before signing. I informed her that we planned to sell the house and divide the proceeds with a split of 60% to 40% in her favor. She would receive the $4,000 currently in our joint account as part of the agreement. In return, she agreed to an amicable divorce and would not make any claims on my retirement. She found this arrangement fair, and I concurred with her assessment. After she signed the papers, she expressed a desire to explain how the affair had started and the details of her involvement. To her surprise, I informed her that I was already aware of everything. I revealed that I had been monitoring and listening to her conversations with him through cameras and voice recorders, even showing her where she concealed her marijuana. She was taken aback and fell silent. I didn't want to hear any justifications from her, as she understood the gravity of her actions. Her tears seemed like an attempt to gain sympathy from me, but I remained resolute, knowing that what's done is done. Edit: It has been 2 weeks since I served Sarah with divorce papers, and we have 76 days left for the divorce to be finalized. The house has not been sold yet, but there are 2 strong interests from potential buyers. My soon-to-be ex-wife and I continue to reside in the same house, sleeping in separate bedrooms. My daughter is no longer speaking with Sarah, and I'm acting as a mediator, hoping to reconcile their relationship. My sons still maintain contact with their mother, but have significantly lost respect for her. I understand that my family will never be the same, and I've come to terms with that reality. Regarding her affair partner, I heard he was released on bail, but is still facing court proceedings, and his case remains pending. I believe he may receive a prison sentence exceeding 2 years, hopefully serving as a lesson for him. Sarah and I avoid each other most of the time. I've started seeing a therapist to help me process everything that has happened. It's been a tough journey, but I'm slowly rebuilding my life and focusing on moving forward without her. Despite the pain and betrayal, I'm determined to come out stronger on the other side. Now, I'm preparing for a new chapter in my life.
Thanks for hanging out with me on today's episode. Brother, I'm Jack, host of this podcast, and it's great having you here. If today's story hit home, send it on to a buddy who might need it. Remember, we're all in this together, turning life's curvy balls into wins. If you have an opinion or story to share, then drop a line in the comments section. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss out. Until next time, keep your chin up and keep pushing forward. Stay strong, folks.